chairs, and then we came out and we blew it.
Well, he told me to sit in the far chair, and I didn't know what that meant.
No, I did think this was the far chair. Ted, we're not calling you out, but we're just saying we have different opinions of what far is. But that's not really what we're here to talk about. We're going to start off light and easy. Thanks for coming out. You all look incredibly attractive and smart. But we'll start light and easy. Ben, what do you think about Syria? Well, that's later. That's later. When I run out of stuff, I hit I go right into Syria. No, the first time, at least for me, oh, God.
This whole time I was like, I hear hers, I don't hear mine, but maybe they're different. The far chair.
I have the knob, and every time you talk, I just turn it out. So far, this can't be going any better. I also almost knocked the chair over when I came out, so that would have been, I just would have left, but I had, when the first time that I knew anything about this, which was kind of that I didn't know anything about this, Ben casually said, oh, will you read this thing? I wrote something, will you give it a look? So I'm thinking, a thank you note, or like just a little note to somebody, or whatever it is I'm thinking, it's like, one paragraph on a page. And I said, oh, sure, what is it? He goes, I'll send it to you, it's a book. And I kind of waited for the bit or what the joke was, and I was like, what is that? What do you mean you wrote a book? Like, I live with you, I work with you. And I thought that was such odd in a super interesting, attractive way. But I had no idea that you were writing it, and so I just wondered, why the deceit?
Why the deceit? Well, in my defense, I mean, it's a book, but there are lots of pictures. And I didn't want, well, now I'm talking to you like you're not here, but I didn't want you, her, you, who am I even talking to them, or you? I don't know who I'm talking to. But I didn't want to feel like, I knew you weren't going to judge it harshly, because she doesn't, she's very good, but I didn't want to be thinking about anything while I was writing it, other than the fact that I was just writing this thing, and it was for fun, and it was for me,
Did you start out making that it was for a book, or you said at one point you just wanted to jot down stories so you didn't forget them and you had all the details?
Well, I used to roast my dad in a good-natured way at gatherings with my family's friends back in Carbondale, Illinois, and I would do it over years. And I started maybe when I was like 15, and I would just sort of tell stories about my dad taking me on a horrible vacation that was recommended to him by a bird watcher, or something of that nature. And so, and I kept telling them, and I would tell more of them into my 20s and into my 30s. And then one day I went back to Illinois for the holidays or something, and I didn't tell a story because I was like, I don't want to just be bagging on my dad. And then when we got home to my parents' house, he goes, hey, why didn't you tell a story tonight? And so I was like, well, maybe I should, at least write them down so that we don't forget them all. And so I really went one by one by one.
How far in before you thought, I think this is a book?
I think I was about 3 or 4 stories in when I started thinking about being raised by my mom and dad with my brother in Carbondale, Illinois, and then, living with you and with the girls here, in LA, and juxtaposing how they parented versus how we parent, and their lives and my life then versus our lives now. I thought it was kind of an interesting thing to write about, and I never put much pressure on myself to do it. I just kind of spent a couple hours every day doing it, and I really wrote it for my dad for a Christmas present 2 Christmases ago, and had it sort of bound and gave it to my mom, my dad, and my brother as a present, and then I never had anticipated it would get published.
Look at you now.
Guys,
and also, just painting a picture of Ben's dad, he is I always say, I don't know if anybody remembers Grizzly Adams. He's just this anyone my age and up. He is this force of nature, big bearded, essentially hippie, super educated, can talk to you on any play, goes up and writes plays with Edward Albee, but is the most sports fanatical, screaming. And when I first met him, I was like, he knows that they can't hear him, right? He's screaming.
He does not. He does not know that. He does not.
But he's such a force of nature and the best, and just full of love for his boys. And so all these stories that Ben tells, it's like he really is like 1,000% behind them. Like he loves to be roasted, like you said. So it's all done with love. And in chapter 1, right out of the gate, you talk about your dad's testicles hanging out of shorts. So you get right. He doesn't pull a lot of punches.
Yeah, I was told to get to it, so I did. And my dad could never be bothered with underwear, which is very true. And we were having, I grew up in, like I said, in Southern Illinois, in this Southern Illinois University, and my parents met at the grad school there. They were English majors. And so all their friends, they would all just go hang out, different nights. And we were at somebody's house one night, and my dad, he was telling a story, and he loves telling stories, and he'll overtalk you, and just kind of keep it going, and in a good-natured way. And literally, one of our friends, Sherry Keller, comes over, she goes, just very casual, hey Steve, your ball's out. and he was not embarrassed. He was irritated to have to stop the story. So he quickly adjusted himself and his weird short.
I've seen some pictures. People were rocking some very short shorts back in the day.
Yeah.
That's a lot of high thigh on a man.
Yeah.
Now, I think as the interviewer, I think that's what I'm called tonight. Have you ever gone commando in public?
Me? Sure.
Oh.
I think so.
Look at us all learning. I didn't know that. I really didn't know that.
I think it was probably late 20s.
Were you out of
where's
laundry?
your laundry
Yeah.
situation? Yeah.
So not really for the spirit of it, just I haven't.
No,
done my
and
laundry.
in terror that whole day. Whereas my dad's like, hey, I don't know, I guess my ball's out. Well, anyway, about Philadelphia in the 70s.
Also, Ben, who we've been married 11 years?
11 years.
11 wonderful years, right? No. He talks about this in the book, so I don't feel like I'm outing him in any way. I have watched you develop your hypochondriac. I'm trying to say it so carefully. He's a hypochondriac. But wonderfully. It's a challenging and very funny to me, not so funny to him sometimes.
In the best way
In the
you
best
can be
way.
one is the way I am.
If you're going to be one, if you're going to have 8 to 9 blood pressure cuffs squirreled away in your closet, which he does it with a lot of gusto.
You have to have your panache, and
Now, here's something I've never asked you, but since you are in specifically head injuries, I mean, he always thinks he's being poisoned, sure. You know that.
half of you are being poisoned right now.
I'm also asked on a daily, every single day of my life, I'm asked if anything I'm pouring for him, is it bad? Are you sure that's still good? And does that dent look weird? To which I just always try to reassure him that I've been slowly poisoning you for years. It's not going to come from one container. I've done it.
It's a shell game.
It's a shell game. You're never going to know that it's in your toothpaste. But do you think, is there any... I think you just got to...
She's gonna kill him with toothpaste.
But if it does happen, you'll be like, I was there when she invented it. Amazing. Now, you talk about someone, especially a lot of head injury stuff.
Sure.
There's been brushing of hair, where
Well,
you
if
think
you
you
comb your
hit
hair
too
too hard,
hard.
you can concuss yourself.
So there's a lot of talk of being concussed. Our family doctor is called. I can't occasionally about being concussed. Your dad could take an anchor to the head and wouldn't even blink.
No, wouldn't care. Would embrace it and
Would embrace
ask
it
for a
and be
second.
like, I'm the one he picked.
Yeah.
Like he would feel. But what do you think between your dad being so different, and you talk about it in the book, is like just lust for life and carefree to like an extent that's like incredible and like joyful, and that you are full of joy, but you also really always think that everything's going to maybe give you a head trauma. There's no real other way to put it, guys.
Well, it's one of the interesting things about your folks and you growing up. Like my brother is probably more like my dad. He worries less and he's probably more fun. And I think it's just an interesting thing. Like I was raised. Obviously my brother and I were raised by the same parents, and I don't know. I just always was a little bit more of a worrier, and perhaps because I had 2 terrifying hernia surgeries as a child. Once when I was in 1st grade and once in 8th grade, and both were very terrifying and not really serious at all. But I think that at some way that made me think that like doctors were out to get me. And so ever since, because of those 2 ordeals that I had to overcome with courage.
Is this where I talk about my 2 C-sections? There's a group up here that hates me. There's a group up there that hates you. She's like, it's me. I hate you. Now, and also, this is great because I get to ask Ben questions. Like, we don't sit around and do this at home, so I'm really.
We should.
We
We
should.
should like pour a drink and like
I'm
have
gonna get
questions.
these. I'm gonna get some of these to the house and freak girls out. But now this is maybe I'm just wondering, with so much about concussions and what is gonna happen, do you think in some weird way that you also, in 175 years, when you get you meet your maker, do you think that's the way you want to go out? Like, is a concussion your Moby Dick?
It's interesting because you might be surprised, but I've given this a lot of thought.
I am and I'm not.
I want to be somehow. First of all, I need a generator, and this is true because I need a generator and I need a very large amplifier, and I need to be playing electric guitar very loud. On the water, like it doesn't. You guys don't have to be involved. It can be a different ocean. And then I want to be struck by a meteor.
Oh, okay. That's better than brushing your hair. All right, I take this the way it's meant. I hope that happens. Because that's spectacular. But in 300 years, we're all we're made of plastic and whatever we'll be made of. Now, are there any? There's no children here, are there? For 2 reasons. How old are you?
14.
Oh, 14. So
Think
you
we're-
know things. Is this mom? If language and something that happened on December 25th comes out, I'm not destroying any childhood, correct? Just please pretend to cover your ears. Okay, on page 43, you said, and I quote, "And said with massive amounts of respect and love to whoever created Elf on a Shelf, fuck you, you fucking monster." That ends that sweet chapter. That ends that sweet chapter. I think most parents here know what he's meaning, but do I sense some hidden anger there?
Well,
Would you like to elaborate on that?
probably the person who made it this year.
That
But
would
I
be
just think
amazing.
that Elf on the Shelf is bullshit, and because it causes questions like Christmas is getting trickier and trickier with kiddos because it has to get more and more magical with all the technology. And there's a Santa tracker on your iPad, and you can do all these things, and there was.
And we don't know how to do that.
And I can't use an iPad. But there's a thing where now, okay, so now I'm there with my daughter, and she's we're in the store and they sell an elf on the shelf, but then the elf on the shelf comes alive and actually talks to Santa, but it's something that you buy at a store. And I was just like, this is just not right. And it starts, I think it's making kids figure it out a lot earlier.
I think there's just one more way to,
Yeah.
I look forward to getting a letter from that very wealthy man or woman. I also know that there's occasionally you can hire someone to come to a party and just sit up on a counter as the elf on the shelf, which somebody may be getting that as a present.
But you know they have, for St. Patrick's Day, at our school, they've made leprechaun traps. Okay, so like a leprechaun trap is basically I take a cereal box and I cut a hole in it, and then somehow the leprechaun's supposed to get stuck in there. And so you decorate it, and it's really fun, except that some parents started putting candy in the leprechaun traps. So now my kid is crying. She's like, I didn't get any candy. And she's upset. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. She goes, and the main thing is I really wanted to catch a leprechaun. So it's just like it's all getting so magical, and so there's so many demands, and we're pushing it all to its limit, I think, in an unhealthy way.
And the more, do you think the more you shine the light on it, it's like it's harder to keep it magical? When
Exactly.
There's 92 things, and 91 of them we forget.
Yeah.
When you don't move that elf on the shelf, guys, that's a sea of tears in the morning. And then you just start making up some real crazy stuff about sometimes elves, sleep late. Like kind of on that, you talk a lot about kind of guilt, like guilt of parents today, and that our parents, or at least the generation of our parents, just didn't seem to have it, which I think is really true, really interesting. But I mean, the more you thought about it and wrote about it, like
I mean, I think it is amazing the amount of guilt that we're as parents feeling these days, and to some degree, it's hopefully helping us become better parents. But in another way, I think it's incredibly unhealthy. Like my parents would, I lived in a different time, in Southern Illinois, growing up in the 80s. Really sounds old. But, I rode my bike somewhere, and I came home at like 5 or 6, or when it started to get dark, and, I was with friends or like acquaintances, and my mom and dad were like, you're fine, it's okay, and, it's just so much different, now, and,
but even with working, don't you think, like both of our parents, like everybody worked, and I think even when I talked to both of like the grandmas now, there's no guilt. They were like, we had to work, we work. What are you feeling all guilty about?
Yeah, I mean, my dad finally got a steady job when I was about 13, and he was like, see ya, guys, I'm not going to be back for a while. And it was great. It was fine, because he was a stay-at-home dad in the 80s when, before it was sort of cool to do that or whatever. And I loved it, and I didn't know any other way. And then when he got a great job, and then he started doing theater and stuff, which was more because it was an interest of his, and he wasn't like, oh, I'll try to get home right after the play. There wasn't that stuff, and like, I know that you and I both, do that a lot, and we love our kids, which is great, but, there is that thing of, whatever. But there's that thing of like, you're doing something and you're trying to do, and first of all, you're working, and that's how we earn our living, and second of all, then you're maybe doing something that's of an interest to you. But we're all like, we can get home, we can be home at like, we're home pretty early usually, like, 5:30, and we feel bad about being home at 5:30, which my parents certainly did not.
Yeah. Speaking of our girls, our 7-year-old, Georgie, wanted to ask you a question tonight, so she made me type it in front of her. She
This
wanted
is
to
going to
ask
be terrible.
It was actually so much nicer than I thought it would be. I said, okay, it's a two-parter. What kind of sweets do you like? She said, oh, anything about his book? And she goes, no.
What kind of sweets do I like?
That's what she wanted to
She
know.
asks me that like every day. Because she wants
She
something,
really-
and then she's like, well, what do you like?
I think she was literally fishing for somehow to get something out of it.
I like ice cream. Sure. Good.
So does she. She's probably having some now. And then she said, do you think your book is good?
Oh, that's, sure.
I said it was. I said it have one for Vivian too. I'm sorry, I had to do both of ours. She said, Vivian is a 10-year-old daughter, and she said, do you think you'll ever grow up to be as crazy as your dad? Said with all the love, our girls love Grandpa so much. Crazy and like the greatest, like well, that's the guy you want as your grandpa.
Yeah. I think I kind of already am. You know, we're just different flavors of crazy. You know.
I find that.
Yeah, like my dad, he recently, when he was staying in LA, he revealed to me, like once in a while he just confesses something to me, which
also,
is
just to paint the picture, he's very loud.
Yeah.
In
really
a great
loud.
way, but it's like it's a lung capacity and a sharpness and a booming, like back of the house. Steve Falcone never needs a mic, so everything has a real like snap to it. It's fantastic.
And he says, buddy, I fell asleep with chocolate pretzels in my pockets. I said, Dad, why do you fall asleep with chocolate pretzels in your pockets? What are you doing? He goes, well, what if I didn't want to walk to the pantry? All right.
What about a pen, too?
Oh, he will no longer use a blue pen because they're not lucky. Bad luck! But if I find a black pen, I pick it up because I know there's a play inside of it. Because he writes plays. So he's getting like lucky sandwiches. If I go to Panera between 8 and 9:30, it's going to be a good day.
Yeah, you talk a lot about your family, your mom and your brother, and that your mom was the one, your mom had 3 boys, and that you have the flip side of that.
That's true.
Do you ever feel longing for more testosterone in the house? Do you
No.
really, do you feel it? Like, is it?
Do I? Yes.
Do you really?
Yes, madam. Yes. I walked into our daughter Vivian's room, and we have been remodeling and just finished. Thank our maker. But Vivian said, if you recall, she said, Mommy, do you think the bedspread is competing with the wallpaper? And Melissa was so excited. She's like, what? Can you repeat the question?
I do remember because I think you were like, oh boy. And just like, yeah, I do. Because I got sweaty and I got a little lightheaded and I thought, this must be what like Texas dads go through when they're like boys playing quarterback. I got an absolute rush where it's like, those patterns are competing, but not in a good. We talked about it for like 45 minutes. I still get like, it was a magical moment. Yeah. So, I'll give you that one.
Yeah, I'm literally like, how can I disappear?
Who do you think is going to handle it better when they start dating? Between the two of us.
Me.
Yeah, that's right. But when I go with them in disguise, like 100%, 100%. My best friend Lisa and I already have a plan that if we think anything's going on, it's tube tops and hot pants, and a lot of drinks, and showing up at the same party that they didn't tell us that they were going to. I've got costumes. It's gonna be great, and full of respect for them. Yeah, you'll handle that.
I mean, just to be clear, their plan is to go dressed in kind of like trashy party attire and embarrass the kids somehow.
You know how many times you have to do that? Once. If my mom would have showed up, if I did not, she was like idling in the car down the street, I would have had a heart attack. If she would have walked in like, hey, Lord, I would not be married to you. I'd be a nun. I'd have gone right to the convent. Like I would have freaked out. So I think my plan is pretty solid. We'll see. We'll see. What you talk about is, which is true of both of your parents, their music. Music's a big part of their lives.
It is, yeah.
Going to see bands, being jazz enthusiasts, rock and roll anything that they loved fiercely, and you always have music going on.
I do. I get, and that's probably just how I was raised. I find a house without music playing to be quite creepy. And if particularly
First of all, thank you.
you play music. David Bowie, guys. David Bowie.
Nice.
But growing up, my parents were best friends with this guy named Joe Liberto, and Joe Liberto played a really nice jazz piano at this bar called the Pinch Penny Pub, and we would go there every Sunday night, and he would play like Linus and Lucy for us, the kids, and he would play Romancing the Stone, and this guy would like play a flute, and we just all thought it was so cool, and the parents were drinking, and the kids are listening to like music, and it was just a fun way to grow up. So music has always been really an important aspect of my life. And in the book, what I talk about is I say the only action. It's not an advice book about parenting. I mean, I sort of give advice, but it's sort of through stories, and if you get something out of it, wonderful. But there is one thing that is true for any parents or prospective parents, which is you do not have to listen to children's music. You don't. And the reason is because when they're small, they don't know how to work the players. And so you can play whatever you like. And so that's what we've done with our girls. And to this point, and they're 10 and 7, it's working like a charm. They like music that we like, and they like music that they like. But there's never been like that stuff.
They ask for like Ben plays guitar every night.
No big deal, guys.
And we say, it sounds much corny, but you play every night when the girls go to bed, and we all sing probably like 4 or 5 songs. And they ask for requests.
And they request pretty much David Bowie. That's it. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is great. Like when she gets sweaty about wallpaper, I get sweaty about a request for David Bowie.
As do I, yeah, and John Prine, and they're like the music they're listening to. That's such an important thing. And talking about just the joy in a house that's with music, and also Camelot, which is your dad's.
Well,
I've heard a lot of Camelot stories from
my dad would in the mornings not always be clothed, and he'd be coming from somewhere in the shower. He would put on Camelot, the record, and I believe he put it on every morning for about 3 years. And so I know every last word of that stuff. But he would be singing it in the showers because he had it on so loud he could hear it in the bathroom. We had a small house, and then he would just be like, "Booked in Camelot," and then he would come in naked. That's how conditions are. And I'm like, "Hot, you gotta get out of here." That was it.
Several more lines, and then
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, he would do that thing where now he's doing this. I know what my people are thinking, and he would just keep going.
maybe that's where you get it. There's the mooning gene.
I moon from time to time.
He surprise moons, and now the girls have also started, and it's all just directed at me. I walk in and there's always somebody going, "Do you know where the plates are?" And it's always a question where I fly into the room. I'm like, "The plates are in the same place." Oh, for God's sake! It's always somebody reaching, but every time it's like, "Do you know where we keep the forks?" And every time I'm like, "They're in the same drawers." Oh! And they're just either Ben, this very
I'm usually just the top because I keep it classy.
yeah, just a peekaboo of what's the possibility. Now, going back to the music, when do you think there's a time, which I'm saying there's not, but do you think there's a time that the girls are not going to let you play and let us sing to them?
Well,
And then
I hope
what do
not.
you say? I hope.
I'll
It'll be creepy if they're in their 30s and we're like, you're singing Life on Mars.
Yeah. Boy, I haven't even considered that. I don't think so. I think they're going to be good. I mean, they seem to
Love it.
And we do tell them, Melissa and I, we tell them every few days, when you guys get older, you're going to hate us. And you're going to forget that you like us. And da-da-da. And Vivian is always like, "I'm not going to do that, I promise." And we hope that we've said it enough times.
I've been saying it probably every 3 months since they were 2. I really haven't, and I know it's weird, and I'm always like, "You're going to have this moment where you think that you have to not like me so you can like your friends better, your friends will like, and I'm like, I'm telling you that's not the way. And they're always saying, why, it's so weird. Why? And I just hope that it like sinks in enough. And then if there's only been a few things where it's kind of started to tip to that, and I'm like, do you remember what I've always told you? Like now I'm hoping that I kind of come home like, maybe I'm psychic. Maybe Mom does know things. So I'm just kind of trying to scare them into stuff, I guess.
I do love the tone you get with them when they ever do it. You're like, remember what I said?
I don't think I say it well, maybe I do. When I'm wearing my long cloak and wizard's hat. That's good. Well, you certainly you've given our girls so much joy in the house with everything. Everything you've learned from your mom and dad, and it really is. It's a happy house, and I look at our girls, and I think they'll love the book when they get over some of the stories.
I feel bad about the one where Georgie did tell me that she had an itchy vagina. And I said...
Just over breakfast.
Well,
As you do.
she was talking a lot about God. Our kids are, and that's just our daughter's way of kind of segueing into the Lord. But our older daughter is very pious and sort of is effortlessly, devout. She sort of used to, when she was 4, she would stare out the window, and I was like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm just thinking about kindness."
And at the exact same moment, about 30 feet around the corner, the little one was standing in her underwear on top of the dining room table going, for no reason. I walked in and said, "What do you do?" She goes, "Anybody gets in here? I'll get one of these." And this is happening, like, which maybe is like Vivian, maybe then, and Georgie, maybe me. But.
So Georgie, the little one, is saying, her segue about the itchy vagina was that she was saying something like, Dad, God is going to kill all of us. And I said, well, I mean, it's...
This is, by the way, when she was...
Yeah, and I'm like, please just continue this train of thought, because I don't have an answer. She goes, Daddy, God is going to kill all of us, but I got to tell you something. What he doesn't know is I'm coming back. And so that was from there. This is when she's always talking about God. And so that morning she said, "Oh boy, God sure did give me an itchy vagina."
Suddenly Ben's cup of coffee was like filled to the brim, and he's like, "I gotta get some more coffee." I was like, "Your cup is full." He's like, "No, it's not."
And that was when Vivian said, because she's very pious, and she says, "Georgie, do not say that. God may kill you, or he may strike you blind, but he will never give you an itchy vagina."
And I kind of thought, just drop the mic after that and like walk out like it was like, you're not gonna top that, man.
And when I do think about happy moments in the house, that's actually one of them.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's like the thing where I'm like, oh, we're doing okay.
Yeah, right?
But I think I've grilled you long enough, and we've talked about so many things, so maybe I'm going to open it up to any questions that you guys have out there. I don't know if I call for Ted.
Yeah.
Ted, your clogs?
Yeah, it's a good
He's got a
cause,
great
man.
red, he's got a great red clog on. I want to celebrate it.
Thank you very much. We reached out to you via email and asked you some questions. I'm going to go through some of them. Natasha and Mike ask, aside from being fans, especially Nobodies, which we watch religiously, we were a married couple in LA thinking about working together on several fronts, but we were very different in terms of work ethic and skills. How do you guys balance working together?
My first thing is we're very different in work ethic. I worry a little bit like, I worked hard, not only to work at all, one of them. I think we love working together. I mean,
Yeah, it's how
I adore it.
It's how we met, and thanks for watching Nobody's. We love it too. But it's really, I mean, we met at the Groundlings. We met because we both loved what we were doing, and we loved to do it with each other. And then we had 2 kids. And I'll pick those up later. No, I think working together for us is a dream. I mean, it's like we won. We get to go to work and hang out, but we really enjoyed working together. I think if maybe you don't enjoy working together, that would be a little pause. Is that a good idea?
I think that was a good answer. That's why I directed my gaze to Ted.
Suzanne asks, will you and Ben ever collaborate on a picture involving heavy dramatic content or roles?
I hope so.
Oh, sure.
That'd be
Oh,
fantastic.
yeah. We have. Oops. Ted, you knocked my pack off. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we're both fans of good stories and good characters, and I think for both of us, we've done comedies thus far, but to me at least, I think to Ben, there's really no difference. Like, if a story grabs us, like, you know, we have a couple things that we're working on that are very dramatic, and I think a good story is a good story. I think everybody loves to get swept up in it if it's a comedy or a drama.
Yeah, and especially, you know, putting together a comedy, one of the things we do what we call alts, which is like you'll, you know, have several different versions of a joke or a humorous situation that you could go for. We do it a couple times scripted, and then we'll, like, you know, Melissa's really great at improvising, and we usually have people around that can improvise a lot. So we'll do a bunch of different versions of it. And to me, you know, directing, and then we'll screen them and just see what's working, and like we'll let the audience kind of help tell us what's working and what's not. And with a drama, sometimes I just think, boy, that is a huge thing off of your chest of, like, not only do you have to try to be elegant and tell a great story and keep a drive going, but you have to be really funny, you know, you really should be. Where in a drama, if you're just keep doing all the other things, it would be one less thing to sort of think about, and you could kind of like really lean on a really cool shot and just say, I love the shot, and it tells the story. Whereas in a comedy, if you have a shot and at the end of it, it doesn't work comedically, you probably have to rethink it.
Is there one person that either of you would love to collaborate with on a movie or a TV show? Who would that be?
Oh my God.
Tom Hanks.
Oh.
I love Tom Hanks. I love everything about Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks.
Oh my God, my list is so long, and I mean.
Does it start with Tom Hanks?
It starts with Tom Hanks. I mean, Meryl Streep. I mean,
Oh my God.
there's so many incredible people.
Julianne Moore.
Oh my God, Julianne Moore. I mean, there's so many people. That's
Octavia
like,
Spencer, who's actually a friend of ours. I would love to work with her.
I have, but. I didn't. There wasn't supposed to be a shot, but right as it was coming out, I was like, oh, this is gonna sound bad.
Pam asks, do your kids think you're funny, or is there a lot of eye rolling going on?
Well, I would say they think we're sort of funny, but I do a lot of bits. I probably do too many bits. And Melissa does plenty of bits. And sometimes I'll go, could you guys stop with the bits? At which point, we somehow, a couple of years ago, and no offense to bankers, but we call ourselves, we're like, oh, well then we'll just be the bankers. And they say, what do you mean? And then, well, now they know what it means. But we said, well, no, we're just going to be very serious about everything. So, Vivian, how was your education today?
I like the top you're wearing, child, youngest child. And they're like, okay, that's enough of it.
And they don't like that, but then by that point, Melissa and I really enjoy those characters.
And then we ride out the bankers for like 40 minutes till they're both like, we're gonna go. But the worst is having, like, when you're really doing, I feel like I always get annihilated when I'm mid, like, very elaborate dance thing. It's usually involving motion, like back in front of the TV, like trying to distract them. And then I realized they're just looking through me. And I'm like, I do this professionally. And they're like, well, not here. So I kind of get the it's never like so much for a line. It's always like when I really made a big effort, then I'm like, all right, let's go get it. Then I come to show you.
And I always like it. I'm into it.
What's the most embarrassing mistake you've made as a dad?
Most embarrassing mistake I made as a dad. There are so many. Most embarrassing mistake I made as a dad. I mean, I've sent them to, there's like stuff that is a big deal to them. Like if it's free dress day, or if it's, they're supposed to dress like one thing, or they were supposed to dress in an outfit and they didn't dress as in an outfit. And so I just felt, it was like, I don't know, everybody at school wore pajamas or something, and I was like, my kids are like wearing clothes. Whoops. And so I was not so embarrassed, I just felt like I did a bad job, because my kids were like mortified. It's true. I brought them back pajamas, I should say. By then they were like, I don't care. I don't want these pajamas on.
To lose for you.
Yeah.
Clearly you make each other laugh a lot. Do you have any pet peeves about each other?
Go ahead.
I find, this is, first of all, great. I find Ben does a very peculiar thing that when we're in a hurry, like we're not late, we're very rarely are we late. But if we are running late, Ben turns into this like ice cold molasses turtle. And I'm always like, okay, come on, can we get in the car? And I'm not kidding, and I say this, and I love you desperately. But like picking up his keys, he's like.
It's true. It is true.
First of all, it's incredible. It's like, it's literally, he's doing his own slow motion and I'm just standing in the door with like steam coming out of my ears. I'm like, you're going slower. He's like, I'm not. Slow.
It's true. It is.
Do you think you do that?
No, I think I do. I mean, you pointed it out, and then I was like, I must be doing it. Because then now the kids, I mean, they've corroborated it. Dad, get going, come on! So, it's true. And I don't have any peeps about her.
God, you're good. Kaboom!
So, before you found success in Hollywood as aspiring actor, did you ever think perhaps you wouldn't be successful?
Oh my God, yes. All the time. I thought if I could, perform at the Second City, that, I would be so happy. And if I could teach and just make any, dollars on the side. I had a backup plan, which was to go to Portland and teach grad school. I had never been to Portland. I am not qualified to teach grad school, but I was like, I might have to go to plan B at any moment.
I do remember, I was like, do you like Portland? You're like, I don't know. So many, 20 years I thought, boy, I'd love to just take away one of my jobs with doing my chosen profession, but I thought, well, as long as I still would get to do it, I'd have kept going. I'd have kept all my other jobs, and I'd still be at the Groundlings doing it.
Well, I remember what is that place that you lived above for a while in New York? Joe Allen's?
Yeah.
You wouldn't go in Joe Allen's.
No.
What is it? It's a place that has...
My first apartment in New York City was on 46th Street. It was actually, Joe Allen's the whole block is the pretty old brownstones. I lived in the 170s brick white building right next to Joe Allen's. And I used to walk by there, and every time I'd walk by, now I'm like, good God. But I literally would kind of turn away and hustle past, because I was like, you can't go in there unless you're a real actor, and I can't go in there. And I didn't go in there until you and I went in there maybe about 6 years ago. And I had such an emotional thing going in there, and then when I got in, I was like, oh, it's a restaurant. Like, it's just, I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but I knew that, like, the real actors after Broadway went in there, and we were on the 3rd floor, right above the pimp, and then the 1st floor was a heroin dealer. And this was before it got cleaned up, but like, that meant so much to me, but I thought, like, I can only go in there when I can also say that, like, I'm actually an actor, so I waited a long time to get a burger at Joe Allen's.
But it never ends, because Susie Kurtz said, she told me this amazing story. She won a Tony Award, and she went to Joe Allen's, because I guess that's what you do, and she's got her Tony Award, and she's like just feeling
Not
incredibly
there.
fancy.
She didn't bring the Tony in.
She didn't bring it in, but she won a Tony like that evening, and she goes, and so she's not carrying it like a lunatic, but she goes and she's having a drink or something, and she's just like, and everyone is noticing her, and she was just like, it was amazing. I felt like I was on fire. Like I've won a Tony, and finally, this is, I mean, people are seeing me. You know, thank you. And she looked back and she realized she was under the specials board.
What writers or comics do each of you like and find funny?
What writers or comics?
Oh,
Oh my gosh, there's no
boy.
ones.
I think Amy Schumer, I think Chelsea Handler, I think Paul Feig, Judd Apatow. I mean, there's so many. I think when people can write honestly and write kind of, when they're the butt of the joke and they're not afraid to show that, because it's such the human condition and everybody feels that, even if it's not in the same field. Everybody sometimes feels like the outsider or the awkward one, and I just love when people write that. I think it's the quality of people that I love. So if someone can write that and get that on a page and let everybody else kind of sit there and go, I felt like that too, and we can all laugh at it. I think one, it's really funny, but also I think it puts some good stuff in the world.
Yeah, and there's also people, it could be like Dave Chappelle, or it could be, you know, Ellen DeGeneres, just somebody who's like so comfortable with who they are, Stephen Colbert, you know, just these people who are just on, like literally at the forefront of what they're able to do, and they're working just at the top of their game. It's like, it's really amazing to watch.
Is there a movie or a book that you'll watch over and over or read over and over?
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Right? I mean, it's perfect. It's perfect. I remember I watched it once on a plane. I mean, I've seen it 9 million times. And I watched it once on a plane and then realized, oh, I can't watch that publicly. Because I was crying so hard, and then 2 minutes later I went from like, and I know that people around me were like, okay, we got a live wire, we got a crazy. And I thought, it's the ride in that and how much I just love those men, and I don't know, it's just perfect.
Ben, on the back of your book is a quote that says, being happy is a choice. It's a choice my father has made. I'm going to teach my kids the same thing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, it's, you know, my dad is like we've been saying, and, you know, what I write about in this book is like that he's a really interesting and great person to emulate, because he is really happy, really robust. Part of that's just how he's like wired, but another part of that is that if something seems to be kind of a problem, he doesn't kind of like whine and moan about it for a long time. He sort of assesses the situation, says, okay, now what are we going to do for fun today? Like, he literally is like one of those people. So I think that's really an interesting way to go about it. And he didn't give me a ton of advice. He wasn't like much of a, let's sit down and, you know, I'm going to go through a 12-point program to how you live your life. But one of the things that he used to say all the time is like, life is really short, don't sweat the small stuff, which other than my 19 episodes of hypochondria a day, I don't. But in general, I'm like my dad, I'm a happy guy. I, like my dad, I wound up with a great wife and a great lady, and my kids are better than my dad's kids were. But it is something that I really I strive mightily to achieve every day. Is to some days are just bad, some things are just really bad, and you can't get around those things. But when something is like, when you're having one of those days, it's sort of medium, and it could be something or it could be this, instead of just letting it be, I don't know why left is bad. This way is bad. But instead of letting it go to the wrong end, I really do try to say, you know what, we're fine, everything's cool, and I think I try to keep a positive outlook. And that was the probably most important thing that my dad taught me, and I really do try to teach my girls the same thing.
So what's the most awkward conversation you ever had with your dad? And what's the most awkward conversation you've had so far with your kids?
Did you hear the itchy vagina one? Seared in my brain, man. Well, I had an awkward conversation with my dad. I've had several awkward conversations with him. I think we've had awkward conversations with everyone, but one of them is when I was in high school. I watched an after-school special, as there were back in those days. There aren't anymore because now it's all on TV all the time. But it was about the show was about a kid, and he turned gay, and that was what the show was about. And I was like, oh my gosh, any of us can just turn gay. And so I go tell my dad, and I say, Dad, what if I wake up tomorrow and I'm gay? And he says, well, hold on. What do you like, guys or girls? And I say, well, I like girls. He says, well, I don't really think that changes. And I say, well, I don't know, Dad. On TV, it can change. And my dad, he looks at me for a second, he just goes, well, if it changes and you like guys, then you'll like guys, and that's fine. And I thought that was, I was the one being awkward. He was actually doing kind of, I thought, a great display of parenting. And then I said, oh, so if I like guys, I'd be fine. And he goes, yeah, you'd be fine. So if you like girls now, it's probably going to stay that way, but if it doesn't, you'll be fine. And I look at him, and he looks back at me, and he goes, you want to shoot some hoops? We shot hoops.
Here's a question from Melissa. What were your parents like?
Oh, Mike and Sandy. Mike and Sandy are incredibly sweet Midwesterners. We're both from Illinois, coincidentally. Strangely, even when I was I guess I'm always still bewildered by, I think a good example of them is I left college, which I barely went to, but I also coincidentally went to SIU and spent most of my time at college in the basement of the punk house directly across from Ben's house before we met. He was still in high school. So I was just down in a basement across the street from you drinking while you were in high school. That's how I spent my time. But I left. That's really a side note. But when I moved to New York, I said I moved with no notice at all. I just got a ticket and moved there. And I was going to finish up at FIT and go into fashion. And I called I had been there about 22 hours, and I said, I'm not going back to college. I've decided I'm going to do stand-up. And my parents went, okay, that seems right. Which is strangely, it took me like 20 years to finally go, that was terrible advice. Like, who says go into stand-up instead of finishing school? But they just kind of always said, if you work hard enough, we think you can do anything if you work at it. if you learn it and if you apply yourself and if you work as hard as you're physically possible, you can achieve some level of success in it. But it was really always about the hard work. They're both very hard workers, and it was really always about like a work ethic that I got from them, and just, they were just always encouraging. I mean, with every level in school and like trying new sports, or it was like silly things like gymnastics. It'd be my dad that Mike McCarthy has no idea how to spot somebody, and I kicked him in the head so many times trying to learn a back handspring. Everybody else kind of had like a gymnastics coach, and it was me and like my dad like out on the farm, and I just kept nailing him in the head. And he would always be like, "All right, we almost got it," just after I'd ring his bell. So we both really got hit with the lucky stick with our parents.
Yeah, and her parents just love each other so much. It's just it's apparent every moment. She makes him a sandwich for lunch every day, and it's a process of love and interest.
Process.
Mike, do you want ham? Sure. Do you want lettuce? Sure. It would be good for you to have some lettuce. Yeah, I just said I'll have some lettuce.
And that goes on for 40 minutes.
What about
I
mayonnaise?
give him grapes, but he's probably not going to eat any grapes, but he should be eating grapes, but I can't get him to. Mike, do you want some? He's not. I know he's going to say no. Mike, do you want some? It's 22 minutes, and then I'm like, just put the grapes on the plate.
But it's all out of love, and it's so much fun.
That's how they love.
And every day from like 11:30 until 12:45, as she makes that sandwich, I am in the front row. I'm literally like standing. How are we going to do it today?
And she'll keep going around the island, and Ben and I just sit and watch her, and we're like, God almighty, he's still making a sandwich. We could make bread. I could take down a live pig and get the ham in the time it takes my mom to make a sandwich. But I have no idea what the question was. What are your parents like? Oh, my parents. They love each other, and she loves to make sandwiches.
Couple more questions. Ben, did your family take road trips? Any fun stories from?
Yeah, no, we took plenty of road trips. So many. My dad had a series of horrible cars, and then finally got a car that we thought was the best car in the world, which was a Honda CRX. You guys remember those cars? It was like it was a two-seater, and me and my dad and my brother would drive to Colorado or somewhere. And my mom was always suspiciously absent from these adventures. But we would take all kinds of road trips everywhere. And one road trip that I will always remember is the one that my dad, he took me down to the Keys, the Florida Keys, because he loved Ernest Hemingway. And so he wanted to see. I mean, this is like a 23-hour drive or something. Just like, all right, let's do it. He had envelopes. He had something called the envelope system. He kept money in different envelopes. One was in his hat bill, and one was in the glove compartment. Buddy, have you seen my envelopes? Yes, Dad. There's like 3. They're all over the freaking car. So we're going down to the Keys, and I'm looking out at the sunset. It's coming up, and it's really beautiful and it's very flat. I said, God, Dad, the sky looks bigger here. And he goes, buddy, it is. The sky's bigger here. And I go, wow, that's cool. It's like because of the horizon line or something like that. And he goes, yeah, because of what you said. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, what? And now I'm 15 or so, and I'm like, well, hold on, like, what? Because we're south, though, it's flatter and the sky is bigger? He goes, exactly. Because, buddy, we're closer to the equator. And then I say, so Dad, did you read about this somewhere? Or where did you hear about this? He goes, what, you mean the big sky theory? And I say, yeah, the big sky theory. I'm not, and he goes, are you sure about this? And he goes, actually, buddy, I just made all that up. And what was special about that, because amongst all the other things, is I just realized, how full of shit my dad is. And then we took a disastrous trip because after we filmed Tammy, I was like, you know what? I love road trips. Why don't we go see Mount Rushmore? And then we finished in Niagara Falls, New York, which is pretty far from California. And I was like, we'll rent a bus and we'll get a driver, and this is gonna be amazing. We're gonna go, it'll be 6 days.
I was like, we're stopping at the world's oldest mustard factory, and there's a weird gnome here, but I didn't realize that when I was doing things on a map, that this was actually 2 hours off the highway. So then every time we were going to go somewhere, it was like, well, it's 4.5 hours to see the mustard factory. So I thought it was going to be all these stops along the way, but.
And I thought the kids would just enjoy watching me look out a window at the country. And the kids hated it, Melissa hated it. She's like, can't we go somewhere fun? I'm like, I guess not.
I would say we were 6 blocks from the hotel.
We just gotten on the bus.
6 blocks away from the hotel.
The bus had just started. Hooray, the trip's starting.
We weren't even up to full speed. And Georgie, our youngest, who was 2 at the time,
2.5,
jumps up onto these 2 big cats. So she's elevated, and she's blocked herself in this narrow hallway that you had to walk down, and she goes,
get me out of this thing! I'm going crazy!
And we had, 8 days of driving ahead of us, and we were like, oh my God, what have we done?
It was an error in judgment.
The same trip, but 4 years from now will be great. I still have hopes. Yeah.
Ben, what's your favorite Tom Hanks movie?
Oh my God. Well, Big. Big is a great movie. Splash.
Nothing wrong with it. Joe vs. Volcano.
Joe vs. Volcano. Bridge of Spies, a recent one I loved. I love Bridge of Spies. I mean, we could really go deep into the canon if you think all these wonderful folks want to do that, because I will go deep. I will go Hanks deep.
You throw on some bosom buddies and I'm in. Right? Right? Yeah.
There you go, punchline. It's a great one.
There's no bad Hanks, guys.
The Money Pit, that was a fun one.
All right, one last question. When is it okay to lie to your kids?
When it serves your needs. Great, well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.